Our guest today has already starred in 2 hit Disney series, Bizaardvark and High School Musical, the series. Her song, All I Want, written for the latter series, is a gold certified hit that cracked the Billboard Hot 100. She's here today following the release of her major label debut single entitled Driver's License, which set the Spotify record for most streams in a day by a non-holiday song. Olivia Rodrigo, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm actually obsessed with the Grammys and the Grammy Museum. I used to live like 3 blocks away from the Grammy Museum in downtown LA, and I used to go all the time, and I'm just obsessed with it. So it's super cool to be doing this.
Well, fantastic. We can only hope that you'll come back once we're all allowed out again.
Oh my gosh, yes, it's the first place I'll go.
So speaking of that, you know, I start all of these interviews these days talking about quarantine, but it strikes me that you've been actually quite busy. I know that you were shooting the 2nd season of High School Musical. How different was it doing that in the middle of quarantine?
Yeah, it was rough. So actually, I had maybe like 6 or 7 months at home where we weren't allowed to shoot in the beginning of quarantine. And that was actually a really nice time. And I made a ton of songs, and I did a challenge where I like forced myself to write at least a verse and a chorus of a song every day. And so that was really nice, and it was a really great experience. And I'm a high schooler too, so I was doing my online school, but now I'm in Utah filming High School Musical, the series, which it's been super interesting. There's like a bunch of like COVID regulations, and we're obviously being extra safe, but it's hard to like not hug all of these people that I love so much. But yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. So you mentioned this challenge that you gave yourself, and I read a little bit about this. What prompted you to do that? To say, I'm gonna write a song or a verse and a chorus every day. What was the motivation?
Yeah, it was kind of like a nice little challenge with myself, and I love songwriting, and I've done it since I was like, you know, ever since I could speak. I love like playing the piano and just making stuff up. But it before like quarantine, it was always kind of like if I have like a spark of inspiration, then I'll like write a song. I'll just vomit all of my feelings onto my like piano keyboard. But doing that challenge kind of really taught me how to have creativity as like a tap and be able to like work on something and kind of craft something from the ground up, even if you're not feeling particularly inspired, which I think sometimes is like half of songwriting. And so it definitely taught me a lot, and I'm really glad that I did it.
Which brings me to the latest single, speaking of songwriting, Driver's License.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned in the introduction, this incredible launch for this song. What do you think of the reaction?
It is absolutely beyond anything I could have ever dreamed up. I went into the release of Driver's License with absolutely no expectations, but I think even my highest expectations wouldn't have predicted this. It's just absolutely insane. It keeps breaking records, which is insane. It's like #1 on the charts. It's absolutely absurd. And it's also a really like strange time because like the song is like #1 in the world, but I haven't left my house. So like I have no like actual context of like the song being out in the world. I just see the numbers. So it's been really crazy. But yeah, I just feel so grateful that people want to listen.
You know, I'm often interested, particularly with songwriters who write a big hit. Did you know at any moment when you were writing it that this was something special?
I try to not write from a place of thinking about what other people are going to think about the song, but I always loved this song. I remember I took it to my producer and I was like, I think this is one of the best songs I've ever written. Like it just feels so raw and honest, and it captured a bunch of feelings that were really hard for me to express just like in conversation. And I think that's one of the best parts about songwriting. So in that sense, yes, I always loved it myself, and I played it for my family, and my family loved it. And I played it for my best friend, who I had been like talking about this breakup with forever, and I played it for her, and she was like, wow, I finally get why you were like complaining for so long. Like, I finally get it. This song made me get it. And I was like, wow, okay, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. I'm probably onto something there. But yeah, I really couldn't have dreamt this up in my wildest dreams. It's quite insane.
Is there something different? And this gets to kind of your own sort of personal evolution as a songwriter. Is there something different about Driver's License than your earlier songs?
Yeah, I think I'm 17. I'm still growing so much every day as a person and as a songwriter. Yeah, definitely my songwriting style has evolved tremendously. I am a very like lyrically driven person, and writing with other people has really taught me about the importance of crafting melodies and chord progressions, and that's kind of stuff that I never really thought about before. I was always just like writing poetry and then putting like music in the back of it. But this song I really kind of came at from a place of like, this is really pretty melody and I love these chords. And I really love how confessional it sounds. It's like super raw and vulnerable. And I think, yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about being a songwriter is how kind of like honestly like pathetic you can be, and it's so empowering. It's like this weird, like dichotomy of like me being like, this is like I'm so insecure and broken, and like people are streaming and I'm like, yeah, like we're broken together. So yeah, but it's been great.
Well, do you think that's why listeners have connected with the song, because you are so vulnerable?
I definitely think so. I think that's sort of my favorite songwriting is when people say stuff that, you know, is not always talked about. That's why I love artists like Halsey and Lorde. Like, I remember listening to their records for the first time and being like, holy shit, you can say that on a record? Like, I've never felt so seen that way. And sometimes it's terrifying to do that too. I remember the night before we put out Driver's License, I was driving home from my friend's house, and I was so scared. I was so nervous that I was going to put this like piece of my heart out into the universe. And I was driving home and my leg was shaking on the accelerator pedal. And so like, as I was driving home, I was like driving home like this because my leg was like shaking. I couldn't drive right. So it's really terrifying, but it turned out to be worth it. So I'm really glad that I put all that stuff in there.
All I can say is I'm glad I wasn't behind you on the freeway. I know that Taylor Swift is you know, an inspiration to you. And I'm wondering, what have you learned about songwriting from listening to her?
Everything. She is, I think, the greatest songwriter of our generation. I learned so much from everything that she does. She so clearly captures emotion, and she's such a storyteller, which I love. I think that's like my favorite thing about her and her music is the way that she can paint pictures and put you in a situation and like make you feel like you're really living it with her. She's just fantastic, and she's just so classy and kind, and she's, you know, been doing this for 15 years and has been, you know, managed to keep her head screwed on straight, and just the way that she constantly evolves and is constantly doing something new and interesting while still remaining true to herself and like what she feels is just so admirable. And yeah, it's crazy that she reached out over Driver's License, because I'm just the hugest Swiftie in the world, as I say over and over again, but I literally am just her biggest fan.
What did it mean to have her reach out?
Yeah, that was crazy. I was like dead asleep, and my friend called me and he was like, you have to check your Instagram, Olivia. And I'm like, oh my God, it's 6 a.m. Like, can we like do this in a couple hours when I'm like more awake? And he's like, no. And I checked my Instagram, and she commented, and it was just, I was just screaming my head off. I like couldn't go back to sleep. It was just so sweet of her. And I, you know, her blessing means the whole world, because I find bits of her songwriting, and then literally every single one of my songs I draw inspiration from her. So for her to say that was really, really special.
You know, speaking of songwriting, you know, most writers, actually writers of any kind, whether it's songwriting or fiction or, you know, newspaper journalists, whatever it might be, they'll tell you that the scariest thing of all is a blank page. So I'm wondering for you, how does a song start?
Yeah, I love lyrics, and I think if I don't start out with a concept or like a couple lyrics that I love, I don't end up usually loving the song. So, you know, sometimes I'll just be like doing my thing, or maybe listening to music, and like something sparks an idea and I'll like write a couple lyrics down in my phone. And that's usually how songs start for me. That's how Driver's License started. It started with a couple of lyrics.
So the sidebar and somewhat of a non sequitur, but you mentioned it earlier, that you're still in high school and you're doing some remote learning or whatever. And this is something that you've been doing because you've been a working actor since you were very young. So remote learning is not necessarily foreign to you, but it is to a lot of kids who are now having to do that. And I'm wondering, what advice would you have for a teenager watching this who maybe isn't so familiar with remote learning?
Gosh, all of the advice that I can give is advice that I don't take. But I think the biggest thing is like to just try to chip away at it every day and not let it like just build up. Because like if you do like one thing every day, it's better than doing like 7 things on like Sunday night. You know what I mean? But then again, I definitely do not take that advice and procrastinate all the time. So I don't know. You're on your own.
Yeah. There's nothing like deadline pressure to get results.
The thing with online learning sometimes is there's no deadline. So like you're just it's just a free for all, and nobody's holding you accountable, and you got to hold yourself accountable, and you're like, oh, like I can do other things. So yeah, it's definitely hard, but it is what it is. And in today's world, obviously, it's a necessity.
So turning to High School Musical just for a minute. So you were I think somewhere along the way, you were asked to write a song for the show. Mm-hmm. And it strikes me that writing a song on your own, from your own sort of sense of inspiration, that's one thing. It's another thing entirely to write a song to fit someone else's creative vision. Mm-hmm. And how did you arrive? Well, tell me about that process first, and how did you arrive at All I Want?
Yeah. So All I Want came out about a year ago, and that was really surreal. It was kind of my first songwriting experience. Not my first songwriting experience, but it was like the first song that I had ever written by myself that was, you know, out in the universe. And so that was really crazy. But it came about, my producer, my showrunner came up to me, and I guess they were trying to figure out a song that they could put in a specific episode. And one of the executives at Disney was like, we want it to sound like this song. And then they referenced a song that I had written and posted on my Instagram. And so my showrunner was like, well, why would we like get like a bunch of like dudes in a studio to write a song that we want to sound like an Olivia Rodrigo song? And so we're like, why don't we just skip the middleman and have Olivia write it? And so he came up to me and asked me. And of course I was like over the moon elated. And it's really insane because I was a 16-year-old with absolutely no writer's credits, and they wanted me to write a song for this like major show that was really special to me. And so that was really surreal, and it was kind of a lot of pressure at first, but it was actually a wonderful exercise as a songwriter and also as an actor, because I had been playing this character for so long and I kind of knew all of the ins and outs of her psyche and what she was going through. And so I got to write it from her point of view. And coincidentally, I mean, she's, you know, she was a 16-year-old girl. I was a 16-year-old girl. We were kind of going through some similar issues. So I really tried to intertwine like bits of my personal life into it and kind of make it feel honest and not like it was, you know, written at a step back, like away from like this character. So that's how I did it. And I wrote it in a couple days, and I actually played it for my showrunner, and I was like, oh, is it good? Do you guys like it? And he's like, it's perfect. And it turned out to be like the highest streaming song of the series, and it went gold, like you said. I think it's actually charting again, which is crazy because it came out a year ago, but it was a truly surreal experience. And I'm just, you know, so grateful to have that exercise as both a songwriter and an actor.
You know, in terms of kind of your musical direction, the sound of your music, you know, obviously you're still, you know, very early in your career. Has it been a challenge to kind of figure out, well, what is my sound?
Oh my gosh, totally. And I still like don't totally know, and I don't think that I'll ever be like, this is it, this is amazing, I'm completely satisfied with this, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my career. And I think that's what's awesome about being an artist, is like you can just constantly evolve, and like whatever you're feeling this one month can be your sound for that month, and then you just constantly get better and change and grow. So I'm really excited to kind of figure it out more, and also when I figure it out again, you know, change it again and then over and over and over again. And I think yeah, it's a cool part about being an artist.
Yeah. You mentioned, you know, obviously you mentioned earlier, we talked about Taylor Swift. You mentioned Halsey and Lorde as being kind of inspirational and influential to you. You've talked about others, Gracie Abrams, Phoebe Bridgers. What ties all of those artists together for you?
Yeah, their point of view, and the stories that they tell, and the way that they honestly tell them. Honesty is the biggest thing in songwriting for me. If I can tell that like somebody is writing a song in order for it to like be a hit, like it's like you can kind of like tell that people are writing from that place and not from like a really vulnerable, open-hearted place. And all of those artists for me are so good at being true to what they're feeling and saying it without worry of what other people are going to think. So yeah, I think those are why they're my favorite artists. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that as you're writing these songs and you're recording them in the studio, you're working with other musicians, you're working with a producer or producers, and obviously collaboration and the ability to collaborate is key in, frankly, just about any creative discipline, but particularly in music and acting. So I'm kind of wondering, compare, contrast collaboration when you're acting versus collaborating when you're making music.
Yes, that is a very, very interesting question. One of my favorite things about being an actor and being on a set is the collaboration. It's a really awesome environment where everyone is just so good at what they do, and everyone's working so hard, and it comes together to make this awesome project that everyone worked so hard to make. So that's definitely probably my favorite aspect about acting, is being in that set environment. And songwriting for me is the complete opposite. My favorite thing about songwriting is being able to sit in my bedroom on a guitar and write something from the ground up that can affect people the way that songs do. And actually collaborating with songwriting has been something that I've kind of been having to learn more about lately. I had always been just writing songs in my room. And so when last year, I guess, when I got into the studio for the first time and started writing with producers and other songwriters, it was kind of this learning curve because I was so used to like just doing it by myself. But it's been amazing, and I've worked with some really amazing people and grown a lot from that sort of collaboration. But yeah, definitely the collaboration levels are very different. And I like how music, you can be so truly yourself, and you don't have to ask for permission for anything. It's one of my favorite bits about songwriting.
Well, you know, I'm interested in the co-writing thing because, you know, some artists take to co-writing, you know, no problem. Mm-hmm. Others, I mean, admittedly, you walk into a room with a bunch of people or a person or whatever whom you really don't know.
Yeah.
And within 10 minutes, you're spilling all of your deepest, darkest secrets. Did that take a minute to get used to? Oh,
yeah. It's like super daunting. And I'm usually a very open person, honestly, to a fault. Sometimes I'm a little bit of an overshare, which hopefully contributes to good songwriting. But yeah, it's really hard to be vulnerable in a group of people that you've never, you know, really met before. And I think that was kind of the struggle early on with writing with other people, is I was like, this song is great, but it doesn't feel like me. Like I feel like a ton of other people could sing it and I would believe them. You know what I mean? I want it to come from a real place of truth for me personally. And so, yeah, but I think it's just, you know, finding the right people and finding people who you can trust and kind of building that relationship with them. And that's been really lovely. My main collaborator is Dan Nigro. He's a brilliant songwriter and produces all of my stuff as well. And having that kind of rapport with him where I feel really comfortable sharing with him my ideas has been really wonderful. And he's also like, my favorite thing about him is if I play a song for him and he doesn't like it, he'll be like, it's bad, write a better one. And I'm like, I love that. I love that energy. Thank you for being honest with me, because that's like the only way that, that's kind of the only way that I can like make good songs, is if someone's honest with me, because I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, it's been a journey learning how to work with other people.
You've also been and switching gears a little bit, you've been active on Instagram with about your views about issues that face society. Why is it important for you, and especially for young people in general, even those who may not be old enough to vote, to get involved in social activism?
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely something that I've thought about for a long time. I'm 17. I'm not of voting age, but you can definitely make your voice heard in so many ways. And especially in my situation, where I have this a sort of big platform, I feel like it's important to sort of use that to stand up for what you believe in. And I think our generation is just so incredible in that way, that we're just really like dauntlessly resisting what we don't like, and speaking out for positive change. And I feel really honored to be sort of a part of this group of kids really standing up for what they believe in. Yeah.
And one of the things, kind of as an extension of that, you've been kind of straight up in facing the challenge of being a young woman in today's society, the challenges that face young women with respect to digital media. Why do those issues resonate for you?
Yeah, I think that that's something we all go through, especially like a year ago, being like a 16-year-old girl. And I'm kind of in a unique situation, but everyone is kind of on social media and comparing themselves to people all the time. And it's this sort of like weird thing that messes with your head, and it messes with your perception of what like real life is. And it can get so overwhelming. And I think me and a lot of my friends my age have really had to grapple with that recently. And so I actually wrote a song about it, and I was just feeling really insecure one day, and was like just going on social media, and I was like, oh God, this makes me feel like terrible about myself. And I sat down on my piano, and I was like, I'm gonna write a song about this. And I wrote a song called 21st Century Girls. And it was just about how I felt like I was never going to be good enough as the girls that I saw online. And it was really like self-deprecating and really, really brutally honest. And I was like, I'm insecure and I feel like I'm not good enough. And I posted on Instagram because I love irony, and, write a song about how much you hate Instagram and post it on Instagram. So many people really loved it, and said that it made them feel really seen in a way that they, hadn't felt seen before. So yeah, that was really cool. And I think that's, again, to the testament of just like how honest songwriting can affect people in a way that, is really special.
You've also been, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, you've been a speaker and a panelist for the Gina Davis Institute. First of all, tell me about that. What does the Institute do, and what was your participation?
Right. So that institute is all about, like, their tagline is, if she can see it, she can be it. So it's all about putting diverse representation onto TV screens and in the media, which I think is so important. As a little girl, to like see people that look like you on TV is just so important. So yeah, we talked a little bit about that, and just representation in the media, which I feel like is a really crucial thing in today's society. So yeah, I was really honored to be part of that.
So we're running down on time. I have one more question for you. We talked earlier, All I Want, Billboard Hot 100, driver's license now, top of the chart. What does that kind of recognition mean to you?
Oh, it's insane. I truly cannot process all of it. The success of driver's license has been absolutely mind-blowing to me. But I just feel so grateful that people want to hear what I have to say. And it's been so surreal to have all of these people that I've looked up to for years reach out and say that they like the song. So I'm just trying to soak in every moment of it. I feel so lucky that I get to be here right now.
Well, we could not be more excited for your success. Congratulations on driver's license. We look forward to the next season of High School Musical, the series. That has to be the longest title in the history of television.
It's so obnoxious. Yes,
Yeah.
but I love it.
Yeah, but good for you. That's fantastic. Olivia, Rodrigo, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.